and our mission is to provide education and support for people with dementia and their caregivers. So thank you so much for joining us today. Today is another ADAPT series presentation. We have one more coming up next month with Gina Rossi talking all about ageism. So I hope you are able to join us for that one as well. For some housekeeping for today, we have of course, the presentation is recorded today. It'll be up on our YouTube channel afterwards. All of the calls any participants, your calls will remain muted today in the call. If you have any feedback or questions, you can type those in the chat box and I'll answer those. If it's a question, we'll read it out during the question and answer portion. I will be sending a email out after the presentation that will include a link for an evaluation. If you are a social worker needing a CEU certificate, please make sure that you complete that evaluation and have your first and last name displayed during this Zoom meeting so that we can properly record your participation. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce our presenter for today, Mr. Jimmy Zollo, who is a co-founder and CEO of Joe and Bella, an adaptive clothing brand that makes dressing faster, safer, easier, and more dignified. After graduating from Indiana University, Jimmy joined Grubhub, one of Chicago's most successful startups ever. He helped lead Grubhub's expansion into new markets nationwide and helped lay the foundation for much of their future sales strategy. In 2017, Jimmy co-founded Collaborata, a research startup that developed innovative projects focusing on generational cohorts, including partnering with AARP on a series of projects titled Hacking Longevity. We so appreciate Jimmy for joining us today to speak with us about something all of us struggle with, what to wear. And as we know, dementia complicates many daily tasks, including getting dressed. So this is a very important topic for us to dive into. So I'm going to pass it on over to you, Jimmy.
Thank you, everyone. Great to meet you. Thank you for having me here today. Really excited to spend about the next 40 or so minutes with you all. As Brooke mentioned, please feel free to add comments and questions to the chat as we go about. At the end of probably about 30 to 35 minutes, we'll have a chance to go through all of those, but depending on when those questions come up, I might be able to take a break and go through those questions as they come on in if it makes sense timing wise. But yeah, so for today, here's what we're going to focus on. I'll quickly share my background, why I got into adaptive apparel. We'll talk exactly about what adaptive apparel is, who it's for, how it can help people. I'll give a little bit of a overview as to the adaptive apparel market, who the main companies are, where you can find adaptive apparel, who's doing what that's interesting. I'll dive into some of the specific solutions, talk about a few questions that were amazingly pre-submitted, and we'll do Q&A after that. So we've got a lot to get to, so I will jump into it. But again, excited to be here, and thank you all for having me. So I'll start with a really quick story. During the height of the pandemic, I was running my research consultancy. We were working on work related to caregiving and longevity with AARP, but I was also helping to care for my grandmother. She was 92 at the time. She was living in a memory care community just about 20 miles north of Chicago. She had progressed dementia. She was a wheelchair user and had a limited range of motion. And when the pandemic hit, we got locked out of her community, just like so many other families did. And what a strange experience, particularly for having a loved one who was living with progressed cognitive change, because the only way to really communicate with her was through FaceTiming a nurse and hoping the nurse could run on into her room. My grandmother wasn't able to pick up the phone by herself at that point. We had tried standing outside her window to talk to her and just about everything else in between. And FaceTiming a nurse was our best shot. And so one of these days, I FaceTime a nurse, and nurse went to go run on into my grandmother's room. And during the pandemic, it was kind of like you get what you get and you don't get upset. And got to see what it was like for my grandmother to get dressed in the morning. And it was a pretty shocking experience. In some ways, the pandemic, I appreciate that it gave me a lens into my grandmother's life that I otherwise would not have seen nor known about. Most days when I would go and visit her, she knew exactly when I would be there. She would be in the lobby waiting for me, hair done, makeup done, fully dressed. She would have a dog cookie because I'd always show up with my dog. But on this day, I got to see how she got to be that finished product, and it was pretty shocking. It took about 20 minutes start to finish. She was screaming. It was the first time I ever heard my grandmother swear. She cried from the pain, particularly from trying to reach her arm backs into the sleeve and try and put her arms up to get something over her head was just this excruciating level of pain. And I remember calling the nurse afterwards. And by the way, this the care partner of the community was kind and gentle and patient and did everything that you would hope uh, someone would treat your loved one in that way. It was just clothes were not designed for my grandmother's changing body and her changing needs. And so I spoke to the nurse afterwards, and she said, "Hey, by the way, this happens every single time your grandmother gets dressed. She's refusing to drink water because the idea of having a bathroom is so intimidating for her. And she's also about average at our community as far as how stressful of a changing experience it can be." So I figured there had to be some solutions out there, and there were a couple. And I went to Google, found one that was specifically designed for older adults, ordered a few items, sent them to my grandmother, and awaited her feedback. And a few days later, after the clothes arrived, I FaceTimed that same nurse to have sort of an unboxing experience with my grandmother, and she refused to try any of the clothes on. All she said was, "Oh no, is this slide gonna work? Too ugly." So here's the problem that adaptive clothes are here to solve. Clothes should not be the cause of pain. They shouldn't cause us injury, nor should they be the reason certain individuals lose their independence, lose their ability to dress by themselves. Rather, we believe, and many other believe, that clothes should be the solution to help us dress with less pain and with greater sense of independence, because what we wear is part of our identity. And as we change and our bodies and abilities change, we should still be able to wear clothes that we love, clothes that look and feel like us, clothes that give us joy, clothes that are cool. Um, so I'm excited to introduce you to Joe and Bella and more broadly to adaptive apparel, because in this industry, we're all about making dressing easier, faster, safer, less painful, and more dignified. We like to say when adaptive apparel is done well, it is great for all, but it can be life-changing for many. So what exactly is adaptive apparel? And by the way, I talking straight to a Zoom is always a little strange to me. So I might ask you questions from time to time. I'm curious, has anyone on the chat um, purchased adaptive apparel before, know someone who's worn it before, been exposed to it in any sort of way? I'm seeing some shaking heads no, which is not surprising because it's kind of a new space, at least when it's designed specifically for older adults. But adaptive apparel could be anything like gym shoes that use Velcro instead of normal ties, socks that have grippers. I've seen Laura in the chat said she's seen some for IV access, which I think is a really cool solution. There are a few brands that make amazing products that are specifically meant and designed to be worn when someone goes to the hospital and they need IV access, or maybe access to ports or different locations. But it can be a variety of things. I think when you are looking for solutions for a loved one, or maybe someone you're helping to care for, or in a professional setting, always start with the need, because a low adaptive apparel in our goal is to design universally, meaning we design for those with the highest level of acuity, and theoretically those solutions should then work for anyone. Clothes do have a specific purpose, and we want to design each one of our products thinking about the end user and how we can make a specific need a little bit easier, a little bit less painful, a little less stressful, a little more safe. So examples is what you see on here. It could be pants where there are zippers that are strategically placed, which can help with going to the toilet. It could help with changing of incontinence products. It can help if there's a change in weight and rapid fluctuation in weight. It can help if there's zippers at the bottom and someone has edema and swollen feet and ankles, so that you can adjust based upon level of swelling. It could be things like hidden magnets and snaps, so that someone with limited dexterity can dress without having to use buttons. So there's a variety of styles and options out there, but I think the most important thing is to always start with, hey, what is your end need? What is the basic challenge you're hoping to solve for, and there should be some products out there that can meet that need. So the problem that adaptive is solving for it's broad. It can be something as obvious as for changing needs of older adults. Dressing can be really painful. It can be stressful, particularly for those that are living with some cognitive change. And we want to minimize how long it takes someone to get dressed with assistance, because if you're dressing for 20 minutes in the morning, changing 20 minutes at night, and going to the bathroom 6 to 10 times a day, that is a lot of time that clothes are a factor and can either be adding stress to your daily life, or hopefully removing some stress and saving some time and allowing that person to focus on what really matters. Problems can be, hey, what's it like to go to the hospital and having to wear a hospital gown, or needing access for IV, or being cold when you're wearing those, or how do we put on shoes if we can't reach our feet and can't reach our toes? How do we put on socks if we can't do that? So we often talk about that. Hey, when we're no longer able to wear clothes that look and feel like us, life gets a little unfair. Because I think a lot of the options historically almost feel like hospital attire, for lack of a better descriptor. And there's been this amazing new wave of dozens of brands that are ensuring that clothes look like they've always looked, which is helping to destigmatize the space in a lot of ways. Um, here's a way I sort of map out what we do, as well as where several other brands tend to fall in this space. There A lot of the innovation in adaptive actually started with babies, which is interesting. One of my favorites is there's a brand called Magnetic Me, which makes magnetic baby onesies. So a parent changing their child in the middle of the night doesn't have to do a bunch of snaps or zippers. The onesie sort of closes right on its own after you change the baby's diaper. And I think a lot of brands saw what was happening in the baby and young child space and has taken inspiration from that. There are brands like IZ Adaptive that is for adults, that's really premium, to someone like Silverts, who's been around for about 75 years and has a tremendous amount of experience in this space. Joe and Bell is one of the newer companies here. We tend to focus exclusively on the older adult market, and population solutions for those living with both physical and cognitive changes as they age. But there are also brands who I don't have listed here who are actually more focused on use case as well. So a company called Rebound Wear that is specifically focused on individuals who maybe just had a surgery or serious injury. So clothes that are designed if you just had a rotator cuff surgery or just broken arm. There's a brand called No Limits on there that's specifically clothing that is designed for individuals who are missing a limb, as their name suggests. So there's a variety of brands out there, all with incredible solutions. And the nice thing about this market is I think a lot of us work together and partner together to try and elevate each other's clothing and innovation in this overall space. And the interesting thing that I would point out is, I think to an earlier thing that we talked about, is that even though it feels like adaptive might be new, in that it is a small market, and your family members, your residents, your patients, folks you see on a daily basis might not be wearing it. Adaptive is actually a really large market. So globally, adaptive apparel is considered a $300 billion global market. So it is a significant market that's growing, and a lot of really fun, interesting stuff is happening here. I'll talk specifically about Joe and Bella, about how we think about designing products and solutions for older adults, which I think for us is perhaps similar to others, but we have a very specific process that we like to follow. Currently, we have 9 products available, ranging from pants and socks to tops and sort of everything in between. Each of our products that we've brought to market so far has some sort of functionality that has never been done before on any other type of apparel product that exists. And each product is designed specifically for an older adult body with the goal of improving the wearer's quality of life as well as their care partner's quality of life, particularly for those who are living with someone who needs assistance for dressing and toileting, and that's regardless of where they might happen to be on their aging journey. Our product development process is guided by what we call the 4 Fs. So it's fabric, it's fit, it's function, and of course, fashion, because the first 3 Fs do not matter if we do not nail the fashion piece. So I'll explain what that means in the context of one of our products. And if you all explore different brands out there for whatever need you have, I would suggest thinking about it in some sort of similar framework, knowing that, hey, the fabric, the fit, and the function, they all have to work together in order to give the individual who's wearing that piece of adaptive the quality that they need for it to be a meaningful improvement compared to what they're wearing on a day-to-day basis. So for us, this is our men's button down. It's perhaps our most popular product that we have. We always start with the fabric. The fabric is actually the first thing we focus on because in some ways it's the hardest part to get right. For this product in particular, we knew that it had to be durable, so it had to be able to take a beating in industrial washes. It had to do well in a senior housing setting. It had to be do well on stains, as an example, yet it still had to be lightweight and breathable. We wanted something that had a little bit of stretch. So not easy to find that right fit for a fabric, but we always start with the fabric. And after the fabric, we go to the fit. So the fit is not designed for someone like me, although I can wear the shirt and it will look like a normal button down, but we fit the shirt specifically for an older adult body. So where certain things hang and where certain seams are on our shirt are different than what you might find if you go get a button down at Target or Walmart or something like that. So we've done a couple of things that I'll call out. The first is we've done what's known as dropping the shoulder as well as enlarging the armhole. And this is specifically for reaching back into the sleeve. And so you do not have to reach as far back as you normally would because we've dropped the shoulder. And the other part is, particularly for individuals who are living with cognitive change, by enlarging the armhole, we just make that process far easier. So it's more of a guided process to find where your arm has to go. And it's just a little bit cleaner of a move to get your arm into the sleeve. Then we've added function. So on top of that, we then add elastic to the back panel of the shirt. What this does, it almost sort of gives it a pullback. So when you do get that first arm in, the shirt sort of pulls and wraps around you is the idea. We then wrap the cuff itself with several layers of elastic because the buttons on the cuff are fake. So getting someone's arm or fist, if they can't go with a straight hand and they're coming through with a fist, getting that fist through the cuff while it's appearing to be buttoned is an easier process because it's fully elastic and can stretch to about 3 times the size of a normal cuff. And the last thing and most important thing that we do is those buttons that you see on this gentleman's shirt, that's all for show. They actually don't button to anything. They're just sewn in there to make it look like a traditional button down. Instead, we have magnets hidden behind those themselves. So once you put on and get the shirt on, you're able with one hand to button up in about 1 second flat. And so someone who maybe just had a stroke and only has the use of one side of their body, someone with Parkinson's who doesn't have the same dexterity, someone with arthritis, it allows them to dress independently in the type of shirt that maybe they have worn for early portions of life and give them that independence back. Or if it's someone who still needs assistance with a caregiver, a care partner, that process with that care partner is a whole lot quicker because you're not going through each individual button and get that shirt on. It is it happens in about 1 second, and it's a really fun thing to see once someone gets to use it for the first time. And last, of course, the final F for us is fashion. Shirt still has to look good. Our process is a little bit different when it comes to colors and styles. We actually have a number of care communities throughout the country that we've partnered with. And anytime we go to introduce a new pattern or print or color, we have a voting process from residents across those care communities to get their input to make sure it's up to their level of a fashion and style that they would be used to, that sort of looks like what's already in their closet. I'll pause there for a second. Are there any specific questions that I can answer about the market, about the problems that these products are looking to solve, or perhaps even about the process for developing them?
I'll give it a second in case anybody messages in, but I so appreciate how you're kind of breaking down the thought process behind the way that clothes for certain people should be built, because in thinking of the many steps it takes for a care partner to get someone dressed, there's so many things that we take for granted whenever we ourselves are getting dressed, that whenever you're doing it for somebody else, it does take a lot of different approaches and a lot of different nuances that we never think about until you're actually having to do it. No specific questions came in yet, but I do have one thing that I wanted to bring up, and you might be talking about it later in your presentation, is if anybody hasn't had the chance to look through the Joe and Bella website, they have a bra on there. I don't know if anybody that's on here has ever assisted a older adult woman who has physical challenges to get into a bra. I was telling Jimmy earlier, right after I graduated from college, I worked at a nursing home, and one of my friends there was 101, and one of my jobs was to help her get dressed. And so whenever I was helping her get dressed, that was my first time I had assisted another person with physical challenges to put on a bra. It is not easy. And so that is something, whenever I was looking through your website, I was really impressed by the bra that y'all have and all of the different details to it that you never think of until you do think of it and think how we can make something more innovative and easier.
Bras are perhaps the most requested solution there is in the adaptive market. And it also might be, after footwear, I think perhaps the most challenging to actually design for, because of how many different use cases exist and how differently our bodies change as we age. And I think bras just become this incredible design challenge. And we're really excited about the solution that we have. And I'll point out a couple of things that we think about it. So for something like a bra, we have a loop that helps to fasten it close. So someone could just stick their thumb in, and that's how you tighten it and get it into place and adjust for sizing and adjust for fit. To take a step back and to walk through a bit of what that design process actually is for not just us, but I think a lot of folks in the space follow a similar, very long process. So start to finish, it takes about 1.5 years to get a product to market, which is kind of a best case. We have a couple products that have probably taken closer to 2 years and have been really hard and really challenging. But for us, we always start with both what we call think about our quantitative and qualitative. So from the quantitative perspective, I'm constantly monitoring search data, both on Google as well as Google Trends and Google Search Console. We're looking on Amazon search data, Walmart search data, to try and understand, hey, what are people looking for that might not yet exist? And we're hoping that folks with specific needs are searching for the same thing and so can sort of point us in the right direction as to, hey, there's a solution that we need, but it's not right there in the market yet. So one of our first products we came to market with was a pants that is specifically designed for incontinence products. when we released this, there's really only one or two other solutions on the market. None were able to do what our pants can do, which allows for an incontinence product to be changed without the pants having to come all the way off. But we noticed this massive trend of folks searching for that solution. In individuals who are living with dementia and Alzheimer's, about 80% of them at some point throughout their aging journey will develop incontinence. And I think part of the reason why incontinence was something that was searched for, but maybe not marketed for, is that it tends to be one of those things around aging that folks don't like to talk about. And so it gave us an opportunity. So once we look at this quantitative data, we then come out with several concepts and ideas. It's literally just whiteboarding and drawing things, and from there we have three qualitative interview groups that we bring these concepts to. So we have a group of professional caregivers who are working in some sort of senior housing or home care setting. We have a group of family caregivers, so husbands that are caring for the wives caring for the husbands, daughters and sons caring for a parent, parents caring for a child. And then the final group are individuals who are living with some sort of physical change, want to be able to dress independently, but don't have great clothing options to do that. And so our goal is, hey, we're going to put these product ideas in front of all of them, get all the feedback, and hopefully then come back to them with a prototype that each of them would be happy for. So if we can serve all those groups, we think we've designed universally. So we get all that feedback, we go and make a prototype, get it back in front of them. If the review goes well, we actually then have the professional caregivers test that product within a senior housing setting, including having some of the nurses have actually worn our products for several days to make sure, hey, it's comfortable or it's holding up. And then we do throw it in the wash there. We try and stain it, everything you can possibly imagine. And we'll get feedback, oh, the fit's not right, or the zipper pull needs to be longer, or I didn't love this fabric, or we needed more stretch in the waistband, or you name it. Sometimes we're fortunate to get a product right in 3 prototypes. That's the best we've ever done. Others, maybe it's 15. that can take a while, but it is a long process to really nail adaptive. And I think that's part of the reason why we haven't seen a lot of other adaptive companies or larger brands in the adaptive apparel space. It is a labor of love to get these right and get these to work and get to function the way we want them to. I'm going to jump into some of the questions that were sent in ahead of time, but again, feel free in chat, if any other questions come up, let me know. So one of the first questions that came up was, what should I be thinking about for clothing options when dementia creates sudden weight gain or weight loss? Yeah, this is a really great question. And geez, the first thing I would talk about is going back to the 4 Fs. And I think as we think about, as you all leave here and think about your needs or the needs of folks you're helping to care for later on, always go back to that as the framework. And so for this, it's the fabric and the fit. So the fabric, I really prefer fabric that is stretchy for pants. That way it can look fit, but it's giving you a lot in that waist. So a lot of our pants for men can range about 3 different waist sizes fairly comfortably. So you can be a 30 to about a 34 in some of our pants, is because we have sort of triple lined it with elastic. So look for details like that, particularly around the waistband. There are a few other products out there. I believe Rebound Wear has some that actually allow for adjustable waistbands, which I think is a really smart and clever solution. There are a few that do that where it's almost as if the belt is embedded to the waistband itself and allows you to adjust that waistband. Same thing with the adaptive bras that we carry. Adjustable sizing, I think, is a really smart and clever thing. I would often recommend, as we age, to start ordering up a size as well. I think it's a lot easier to fit someone a size up than a size down as weight fluctuation becomes more of a challenge. One of the other questions was about what things to consider if a person with dementia tries to remove clothes or regularly pulls at clothes. Yeah, disrobing is, my goodness, it is it is a challenge. I don't know how else to describe it. And it's one of those challenges that clothing can be a solution for. There's a company called Buck and Buck who I believe were the first to develop it, but they have what I'm showing now is these are one piece sort of jumpsuits is I believe what they call them that zip up in the back. And so this I think it's like their dignity jumpsuit. And so this is for someone living with dementia or cognitive change who is a disrober. And obviously, disrobing is something that can feel it's undignified. It's not something that loved ones want. And a jumpsuit like this will prevent that from happening. Now, I would be I believe in some states, you're going to have to look into this, that there are some rules around this type of clothing. I think some states actually view anti-disrobing clothes as being uh, essentially
Restraint.
confining, yeah, restraints. So it depends state to state. Some of these solutions should be for at-home purposes, or if they're at a care setting, a loved one would probably actually need to sign off on them being used. But they're great solutions in preventing someone from disrobing. I believe there's probably at least one other brand that offers something similar to Buck and Buck's jumpsuits. They have versions for women as well, but it tends to be a problem that more strongly persists for men as they age. So definitely check Buck and Buck out if you have anyone living with that challenge, because it is a challenge. Okay. What can I look for that can help with incontinence? There are a few things. We have a product which is called CareZips, which is specifically designed for an incontinence brief. So what CareZips does, and this might not be the best image to show for it, but it has a 3-zipper system. So we have this inseam zipper that wraps around internally from knee to knee, and externally we have 2 side zippers that go from waist to knee. So what that allows for is the pants can fully open up, and someone who's wearing an incontinence brief can have that brief change without their pants coming all the way off. I think in a care setting, it's particularly helpful. So folks are able to almost be changed more frequently, especially when a higher percentage of the residents are wearing some sort of incontinence designed pants, because it just ends up saving everyone a whole lot of time. There are, I believe Silverts also has a really interesting, what they call an open back pant, which I think works well for someone who's going to be probably seated or in bed for a long period of the day. But Joe and Bella pants are a little bit different design. I think work differently for those that are going to be a little bit more mobile or active over the course of the day. The other advantage for having that inseam zipper, particularly for men, it gives access to handheld urinals, it gives access to catheters, it gives access to colonoscopy bags as well. Okay, one of the other questions was ease of changing person can you talk about ease of changing clothes when the person is bedbound or reclined in a wheelchair, but still wants to dress and to look normally? Yeah, again, another major challenge. They're definitely check out Silverts here. I think they have some really great options for this. What we're showing here is one of our women's tops that opens through a side seam. Silverts has some options that, and I believe Buck and Buck has some options as well that fully open up in the back. And so this allows for clothing to go on almost as if it's a hospital gown, and then snapped up or zipped up, depending on the specific company's product you're looking at, and looks still like a normal polo or normal long sleeve shirt, but it went on exactly like a hospital gown. And I know a lot of folks end up using these products as if they were hospital gowns. It just happens to be a more dignified solution for folks living who may be having long-term hospital stays or stays at skilled nursing and don't want to have to wear a hospital gown for the full day. One of the other questions we got was ways clothing can support dignity and independence with someone with changing capabilities. So what I'm showing here is this an event we hosted at Belmont Village, just outside Chicago in Lincoln Park. It's a fashion show that we hosted. All of the models were living with some form of cognitive change. Average age of our models was 88. Half used a walker or a wheelchair to make it on down the runway. So we strongly believe the best way to support dignity and independence when it comes to clothing is by finding clothing options that look like it's what is already in that person's closet. And I think this is particularly impactful for individuals who are maybe new to a senior care community. Maybe they just moved on in for the first time, or maybe they just moved on into a new apartment or had some sort of dramatic life shift. Maybe they've got a new care partner who's helping them out, or maybe they're living with a family member. When someone with cognitive change is going through one of those key inflection points, anything that feels normal is incredibly important. So trying to find clothing that matches their normal, what matches what they're used to, so that when they open up their closet, when they look down and see what they're wearing, it looks like them, I think is incredibly important. As far as the independence piece, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis for what the specific needs are. So if it's someone with Parkinsonia dementia who maybe their dementia is not as progressed, but they're living with some tremors, something like the magnetic button down is just a really great solution because it's allowing that individual to dress themselves quickly and easily and without pain. If it's someone whose cognitive and or physical change is more progressed and the ability to dress themselves is no longer there, I think about options that can just dramatically reduce the time it takes to get dressed, and make that process just less stressful and easier for anyone involved. And then I believe we got one more question. Yep. So what do you look forward to in the adaptive industry? Yeah, this is a really great question. There's a lot. I would say the pandemic in an interesting way has led to a wave of organizations and startups that are more focused on serving older adults than they were before the pandemic. And ARP has some data on this that really bears this out, that there's been a historic push to the industry, which is called H-Tech. I don't love the name from the industry, but that's what they're calling it and what we're technically bucketed on in. But there's been this unbelievable wave of investment in VCs that have propped up and private equity that is more focused than ever in what's known as the age tech space. So I'm really excited about that level of investment and focus growing and scaling for us personally, where we have several new products coming out this year, including a really cool women's cardigan, a women's magnetic top. We have a men's quarter zip, a magnetic quarter zip coming out. So we have some really fun options. I know some of the other organizations out there who are working the space has some really cool options as well. If you need adaptive footwear, by the way, I should have thrown these guys on the market slide, but check out Kizik, which is a phenomenal Kizik adaptive footwear brand. They're perhaps the largest adaptive brand in the world right now. I would think. What they make is shoes where the heel collapses. So if someone is a wheelchair user, it just can't reach their feet, or if it's uncomfortable to, you don't have to tie, you only have to tie your shoes once, and you can tie them in your hand, put the shoes on the ground, and you just slide on in as if they're a slipper. Then the heel pops back up and they're fit like a normal shoe. It's a really brilliant solution. So definitely check out Kizik, Kizik, if you want adaptive footwear options. I do see there is a question in the chat. Are there shower clothes when a person needs assistance with bath or showers that they are concerned with cover and modesty? And does anyone make that? Great question. The answer is yes. Oh, geez.
I
I'm
know
gonna
what
have to.
one, if you
Okay,
wanted to
thank
think
you.
about it. So the one I actually, Matt, I saw your message and I actually looked it up real fast because I didn't know the exact name of it. But the one that I've heard talked about in this space is called the Blue Hug. And it looks like this. Is this the one you're thinking of?
Yep.
Okay. The Blue Hug is and I believe it's like a zippered thing that you wear for modesty during the shower.
Right. And I'm pretty sure they use the fabric that they use is almost similar to like a wetsuit. So it has that added benefit of helping keep the individual warm. as they're sitting there. Really, yeah, really great. I think there are a couple more folks that have been thinking about that space as well.
Mhm, mhm. We had Adria Thompson, whose handle on social media is Be Like Care. We had her as our keynote presenter at our Ed conference last year, and she is who I heard about the Blue Hug through. She talks a lot about different adaptive technology that comes out. So could also be another good person to look at.
Yep, absolutely. Are there any more questions
I
that
have some questions that were
Great.
sent directly to me. One about shoes. So I'm glad that you said that company title. I put that in the chat for everybody, and I can also put these things in the follow-up email as well with some links to the websites. Um, okay, here's a question. Do you have any tips for ways to adapt clothes that someone may already have in their closet?
It's funny. There have been a lot of viral TikToks over the last 2 years of folks doing this. So if you are skilled as a sewer, you can absolutely check Google or search in TikTok for folks that have done this and can probably better advise than I can. I think there would be for button downs. I think I would not use magnets unless you were purchasing a shirt like ours. I wouldn't recommend putting in magnets into a shirt, but for buttons, if you could sew in Velcro behind those buttons, I think that's a great solution. The reason why I wouldn't want you to do magnets unless they were professionally sewn on in is I think there's risk of those falling out. There's risk of swallowing those. Also, the types of magnets that we use or anyone like us would use are encased in a really thick layer of plastic to ensure that they're safe. So in case someone accidentally irons them, it's not going to cause any meaningful damage. So don't use magnets unless it's something that you're already going to get yourself. Use Velcro instead. If you want to adapt your own clothing. But yeah, that's the best advice I can get. Or just and then Google what other people have done on. There's
Yeah.
some TikTok videos showing how folks have adapted their own clothes.
Yeah, one I hear or that I saw a lot in working in senior living was suspenders instead of belts, or buy pants bigger and wear some suspenders. Those are always a handsome alternative as well. Okay, one more question. It kind of speaks to one that you've already talked about, but many people with dementia often feel uncomfortable in their clothes and may want to try to take them off in public spaces. Do you guys have any products that will encourage them to keep them on?
So yeah, so we don't. I don't know if it's a place, an area where Joe and Bella will ever develop products for, but definitely check out Buck and Buck, who has their jumpsuits. I believe Silverts has some options as well, as long I'm not 100% sure on that. So those would be the two best places to look for if you know a disrober or someone that wants to really be finicky with their clothes in public places. Looking into those jumpsuits makes a lot of sense. Just make sure you get the sizing right and make sure that if you're in a state where that would be considered a restraint, that you go through the correct process to get that all taken care of.
And one little comment that I have about that, I used to have a resident that I was work with, and she was teeny tiny, but she would wear very oversized clothes and still think that they were so tight on her. Just a part of her dementia, she was extremely sensory sensitive. And so it possibly could be the material of the fabric. Either that person is too cold, that person's too hot, the fabric is itchy, there's a tag in the fabric. So as a person is with dementia is not always able to communicate those very nuanced opinions to us. Sometimes it could be just something as simple as, the fabric is too itchy, as well. Okay, some other questions that we have. Okay, this one's kind of a silly one that I had, but so you had mentioned the Magnetic Me brand. I had that brand for my little girl when she was a baby, and I was always so confused of like, how do I dry that material. In the dryer, it sticks to the side of the dryer. So just curious if there is like a certain, how would you, is there like a care guide for some of those very like, clothes that I normally wouldn't purchase, but
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the challenge with the magnets is they will stick, depending on the strength of the magnet, will stick to the top of the dryer when you're drying them, and they can get all clumpy. So it's like the outside is nice and dry, but the inside is totally wet. So there are a few things. There are we would suggest putting, if you're going to use a dryer, you can put in an individual dryer bag. That way, it's not going to get stuck to the top of the dryer and go through it. We say no ironing for any product that is using those magnets. For most of our magnetic products, also we say air drying is totally fine as well if they're hung on a rack.
yeah. And I really like that you mentioned about the, just extra protection of that. It's a sewn in magnet and, for swallowing risks and things like that. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Okay. Are multiple waist length slacks for men available, or do short people have to alter?
Great question. I would say it probably depends on the size variance we're talking about. So for Joe and Bella, and not to speak for the other brands, I'm sure some of the other brands you could probably get different size options depending on what you're looking for. Joe and Bella, all of our pants come in multiple waists. And then our pants come in typically 2 inseams. Our best to make them as universal as possible. I think our smallest men's inseam is 29 inches. So if that ends up being a little bit still too long for the individual that'd be wearing it, you can definitely get that alter to adjust. There are some companies, however, that I think have done um, um, pants that essentially have their own inseam adjuster, for lack of a better descriptor, where they have like buttons on the inside of the pants where you can roll them up, so it looks as if they've been altered. So that's an option as well. I believe Silver's carries pants like that.
Okay. Okay. Keep the questions coming, guys. These are great. Okay. Another question is about you mentioned stains a few times, and so that jogged my memory of, you go into a hospital or a adult care community, and usually in the memory care side, you will see, for the lack of a dignified term, of like an adult bib or like a garment that's over top of someone's clothes while they're eating. Are there any more dignified solutions to that that you know of, or that are in development?
I'll have to look up the name of the company, but there's a brand in Canada. I believe you can find the product on a website called Eugeria, Eugeria. And the product is essentially a bib that looks like a scarf, and they have options for both men and women. It's really cleverly designed. It just looks like big, beautiful scarves come in a bunch of different fabrics and patterns. And if you didn't know the purpose of it, you would just think that person's wearing a really fashionable scarf. And I believe Egeria still carries that. I don't know of any other folks that do that, but there are different sort of adult bib options out there. I think, going back to the dignity piece, there's some that come off as super undignified. So just be careful with that if the individuals would be sensitive to it. But there's some really clever ideas. There's a company called who does a tux bib version. It's funny. I have not seen the tux. So Laura in the chat mentioned there's a company that does a tux bib version. I have not seen that, but that's really funny. But yeah, so I think there are a few options out there that you might have to do a little bit of digging, but I would recommend checking out Eugeria as a starting place.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So we have about 10 minutes left. So please, people, keep sending us some questions or some common clothing challenges that y'all experience. And then possibly we could think of some solutions for those as well. So another question that I was just thinking of And well, this isn't the question, but I did have a note. So for the magnets, does that interfere with someone that has a pacemaker? That might be a silly question.
No, not silly at all. So the magnets that we use are, and what I would assume most folks in the space use are low strength enough, and they're encased in fairly thick layer of plastic. Then they're of course then encased in the fabric or in the shirt or the product itself, that it should not interfere with a pacemaker. However, we would always say check with your doctor first. And so all of our clothes that use magnets have big warnings in multiple languages saying, please, if you're a pacemaker user and you are using an item with a magnet, please verify with your doctor that this is okay. Just because we want to make sure that folks do their own research with their own doctors to make that sort of decision. It's interesting for shirts. There are a few options. You could use magnets, you could use snaps, you can use maybe zippers, and you can use Velcro. And I think out of those four, each of them have strengths and weaknesses as to how much easier or harder it would be to make that an effective solution. So for an example, Velcro to me might in some ways be the easiest solution, but it also ends up being the least durable, particularly in senior housing settings, because if it's going in a big industrial wash, it's going to get all the lint on it, and Velcro just doesn't hold up in the same way as a magnet sewn into the shirt itself would. And durability to us really matters. And the second part, we also don't think we also think Velcro shirts end up looking the worst, because if you don't line it up perfectly, then the shirt can look like it's ill-fitting, and it can defeat some of the value of the other parts of the shirt and the fit that has been specifically designed. So we tend to avoid Velcro when we can, just because we think that is the least durable, least fashionable option out there. So then that leaves snaps. We occasionally use snaps for pants, but we almost only use the snaps to help secure something that's already there. Snaps to us, particularly on shirts, are tricky solutions because I think individuals with Parkinson's or who have just had a stroke or are living with arthritis, that's a challenging way still to put on a shirt, and I don't think it really solves the problem. So we avoid snaps the best as best we can, and that leaves the options of zippers and magnets. So for us, zippers can actually look really great because the shirt will fit exactly how it's designed to work. The challenge with a zipper on a shirt is how is it secured at the top, and will it eventually come on down? And the other challenge is if you're using a magnetic zipper is theoretically the solution there, because you don't want someone with arthritis or dexterity challenges to be using a normal zipper. So you're using something magnetized anyway. So if you're using some sort of magnetized solution, you might as well be using magnetic buttons instead to put the shirt in place. So that's our thought process. I know that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but there are longer term. We're thinking about 3D printing different snap styles, which we think might be an easier thing. So think about if the shirt had a pattern essentially printed on it where you can just press against it. So it's like one big snap closure. We're testing that out. It's really hard and tricky to get right, but we think that might be the best long-term solution if we ever figure out how to do it.
That, I mean, just like you're talking about the innovation of just some of these different things that you talk about, it's mind blowing for someone that's, not as creative artsy. But I could see how it just, at the end of the day, would make someone's life so much easier. And, ultimately that's what our job is to have someone have more joyous moments, have, less stress, have more normalcy and independence, dignity. Love that. Love what y'all are doing. So as we have about 5 minutes left, I do want to talk very briefly about how I first was introduced to you, and then also about the piece in which this very specific part of the industry has in advocacy for people with dementia. So I first heard about Joe and Bella through a Hilarity for Charity interview that Jimmy was a part of and I was just sitting in on. And so it's really neat to see, you know, how far reaching something as not simple as clothing can go to be a part of advocacy and support for people diagnosed with dementia and caregivers. So if you could just speak briefly on that.
Right. So Hilarity for Charity is an unbelievable organization founded by Seth and Lauren Rogan. Lauren's mother and Seth's mother-in-law passed way too young from early onset Alzheimer's. And they created the charity Hilarity for Charity. It actually started as a special on Comedy Central where Seth got a bunch of his buddies to do stand-up comedy to raise money, and it's evolved into a really amazing foundation. They do advocacy work, so they're visiting Congress at least once a year, advocating for the rights of individuals living with cognitive change, living with Alzheimer's, living with various types of dementias. And advocating for more dollars for research, more dollars for caregivers, more dollars for those individuals living with those sort of changes. They also do education. So they strongly believe, I think the stat that they shared was 80% of dementias could potentially be avoided based upon lifestyle choices. So they are trying to educate our youngest generations as to how to make those right lifestyle changes and to promote better brain health. So the type of sleep you have, making sure that sleep is not coming about using medication, because that's not the right type of sleep. Making sure that you're eating right and exercising right and dealing with your stress, because all of that goes into our brain health. And the last thing that they do, which is also deeply impactful, is they offer grants to individuals who are helping to care for a loved one with a form of dementia, and don't have the means to provide the type of care that that person needs. And so it's an amazing organization that we've been happy to partner with. What I'm showing on the screen here is what we call the Seth Rogen vacation shirt. He actually designed this. So he took our button down and came up with this style with some crazy flowers and colors, which are in his charity's colors. And $10 for each shirt that we sell goes back directly to Hilarity for Charity. And so an organization that's doing amazing work that we're excited to partner with. And yeah, I think they actually have a big event coming up in September that we ought to be at as well. So be on the lookout for anything Hilarity for Charity does, because they also host annually an amazing digital conference talking about all that's new in the world of aging and longevity and what they've learned and grown from over the course of the year. And they also do things like share caregiving stories. So amazing organization, absolutely worth checking out if you haven't already heard about them.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. They do a lot of great stuff and on a national scale. So our nonprofit, of course, we are local, just to the 10 parishes within Louisiana where we service, but for families, you know, here, there, and everywhere, they're not as blessed as Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to have an organization like ours. So it is a really neat segue from, you know, clothing and just a clothing brand into advocacy for people diagnosed with dementia. And I also really enjoy, there's one thing that you said, and then we'll probably be at time, about how clothing can help with stigma breaking. I think that's something that is a more recent conversation in the like dementia scope. But you know, stigma for folks diagnosed with dementia is a big thing within their forefront of their mind. So yeah. So love that we're a part of that positive conversation. Okay, one last question, then we'll probably be at time, is there a one-stop conference or resource for all things adaptive?
So that's a great question. I would there's no conference that I know of. There's the Disability Expo, which happens all over the country, that has a lot of fantastic products for individuals living with different types of disabilities. Specifically for adaptive, I would check out a YouTube channel called the Adaptive Equipment Corner. It's two women who lifelong caregivers who review different adaptive products. Anything, things like what we're talking about here, to walkers and canes and wheelchairs and ramps and anything. I think I'll seen them do like can openers even. So anything that can make the life of someone a little bit easier, they review, and that's the adaptive equipment corner. And that they're fantastic and do a really great job. I I don't know if anyone else, but I would start there.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I've never heard of them, so I'll definitely look them up too. Thank you for that. The only suggestion I would have would be like the ASA conference, American Society on Aging. I think they're in Orlando this coming up year. They were just in San Francisco last year, and I know their whole thing last year was on tech, I want to say, and I think it's on ageism this coming up year. But that could be another, if you're looking for a conference that's all things aging. Well, good deal. Well, we're right at 1 o'clock. So Jimmy, thank you so much for your time and for your talent and dedication to this market, and for supporting, the population of people that we're all looking to support. So thank you so much for your time and taking the time to speak with us today.
No, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And please, my email is jimmy@joeandbella.com. If there's any other questions that come up, or if we can ever be helpful, please let us know.
Thank you so much. I'll send your email and contact information in our follow-up email as well.
Perfect. Thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.